A very warm welcome to the sixth masterclass in the past 3 months. And today I'm very excited to speak about an industry that is really shifting, rethinking the way it is operating, and adopting digital like no one else has. Yes, it's of course the shifts that we are seeing in the pharmaceutical industry. So, what has shifted in people and the workforce? If we have to take a step back, we see that the way we live today is far different from the way we probably lived a year ago. The touch points that we've created for ourselves, the way we interact, the way we think, buy digitally, of course, engage with people personally and professionally has changed. There is remote and hybrid working, which is becoming a total reality. Leaders are now forced to kind of really balance control and trust, especially with teams working remote in many, many traditional industries. There is a dip in face to face engagement, and we know that face to face engagement remotely is really here to stay. So, what are some of the shifts that we are seeing in consumer behavior post COVID, and what has shifted digitally in pharma? There is tremendous amount of digital acceleration and adoption as we observe. Digital medicine is occupying a center stage today. MedTech and pharmaceutical sales have gone digital, according to Bain and Company, and these are really shuffling and reshuffling a lot of aspects within the industry. So, what are some of the behavioral shifts we are seeing post COVID? There's a lot of stickiness when it comes to forced behavior and satisfaction, right? So you can create stickiness only when people are forced to adopt to a certain behavior, and they also find satisfaction in adopting that behavior. And that is the stickiness to digital that is happening today. And so the stickiness, which is equal to forced behavior into satisfaction as per McKinsey, is forcing us to learn and unlearn in the face of shifting reality. We all know that behaviors take a long time to become habits, and consumer behavior, therefore, which used to take a pretty long time in the past, thanks to COVID, you find that these behaviors are shifting faster. People are adopting and adapting very, very quickly. There's a need for reinforcement and providing learning opportunities for employees in the pharmaceutical firms, apart from the other industries, which is definitely going through a very rapid phase, a very rapid shift, and especially in the digitalized world. So what has changed for people in the pharma sector? Lot of the decisions are experience based. You see that the experience that they've had while digitally buying something, while digitally connecting with doctors, while digitally looking at medicines, all of this is shifting for people. Gone are the days when we used to visit the pharmacy to pick up medicines. Today it is we pre-buy and we only collect it from the pharmacist, or better still, pharmacists deliver it home. There are lesser visits to buy anything, be it grocery, be it your daily supply of provision, vegetables, or your big time purchases, including electronics. And there is a definite trust in trusted brands that we are experiencing, that consumers are aligning to. So you want to buy from a reputed seller. You want the brand to be a trusted one whether it is buying vegetables or whether it is buying non-edible things off the e-shelves that we are experiencing today. So something else is happening for the pharma representatives too. So one, their face-to-face time with doctors has definitely come down. No longer can they see physicians as marketing targets, but they are forced to see physicians as thorough professionals, according to Florent. There is a need for authentic discussions, as we are observing, and the push for true care is at an all-time high post-COVID. What is the conversational value that the sales rep is really able to bring to engage the healthcare professional? Does he even think about it? And does he also learn to adopt digital? These are some things that are happening in the space of medicine and telemedicine for the pharmaceutical representatives. What are the major areas of impact? One, experience-based buying. Two, health and well-being. There is a surge in telemedicine. It has increased 10x times in 15 days, as per McKinsey. And e-pharmacy, holistic wellness are taking the center stage for most of the post-pandemic situation. There are varied implications as we observe. The first one is when you look at organizations, there is digital adoption that is being accelerated, remote working, whether it is remote teams across geographies or within geographies. In the same city, for example, you still have remote teams working. There is a remote connectedness that is being established between representatives and doctors. When it comes to leadership, abilities such as risk-taking, use of analytics, data for decisions, mental agility, the very holistic wellness that leaders have to have in ensuring that the organization shifts at the pace that is required in the post-COVID situation are all, kind of becoming points of observation and learning. The entire sales process, the way medicines are sold, has been redefined. There are very less touch points today. Hybrid sales models are on. Trust and authenticity are the driving factors for sales in the pharmaceutical industry. Products which used to take longer times are being generated at a pace which was unheard of, and speed to market is being realized as the key for agility and survival in the pharma industry. So what are some of the skilling aspects given the continuous shifts and contexts that is shifting day by day? The current trends, obviously across industries, is forcing us to go digital, which means there is a lot of upskilling and reskilling that the workforce has to be exposed to. There is a shift in the learning landscape itself. The way we learn, there is a surge in investments, into digital learning. There is a spend in learning adjacencies, as per McKinsey. For example, in the past, 35% of Netflix users used to obviously, Netflix was considered as a definitive source of movies. And today, Netflix, according to McKinsey, 35% of people are using Netflix for educational content, and the source is from YouGov. So when we look at some of these trends that are shifting, the way we are learning is shifting. The way workforces are expected to upskill themselves quickly for survival and for continuity is really changing the way organizations have to look at skilling, reskilling, and upskilling their workforce. What are some of the aspects to consider again? When you look at sales teams, it's no more about just selling, but it goes deeper into understanding remote engagement. understanding what are the virtual tools that will be most beneficial, understanding remote presence, and how do you read body language when you are not face to face. When you look at the level of managers, they are continuously learning how to manage remote teams. When it comes to the medium, a lot of learning has shifted from in-person to video-based learning. There are critical skills that there is a focus on. There are adjacent skills that there is a focus on. Selling skills, but for example, how do you sell? But you not only sell, but understand the emotional intelligence that you need to have in the process and the emotional intelligence that is required collectively as organizations to ensure that the sales process is working well and the experience created for customers is something that is at the forefront. Focus on outputs. While in the past there was a very heavy focus on output, which is there even now, result orientation is still there. But there is a definitive skill that is required in the remote working arena, which is understanding engagement that teams require when you're leading teams. But most importantly, I think a mindset shift in understanding and learning how to trust remote teams is the key for self, for teams, and for businesses to thrive in the post-COVID era. So, some more aspects and some more questions to consider. For the new business model, what are the skills required? What is the skill bucket that we need to be focusing on? Which are the critical pockets of people that we need to be targeting? And how is the value being created for the organization as a result of this diagnosis? How do we start working with critical teams? What is the extent of scale we are considering when we look at reskilling and upskilling to suit the future? Are there needs for individualized journey maps that we need to be considering as learning professionals far beyond the vanilla skills that used to be provided in the past? How do we retain the small company mindset in learning and agility while we are probably large organizations? And most importantly, how do we prevent learning budgets from getting cut? Or how do we retain learning budgets? Because this is going to be a game changer in upskilling and reskilling of the workforce. And all these have been very, very beautifully dealt by McKinsey in one of their research papers, and I urge you to read it. So what are some of the skills that we need to be developing in people? Obviously, frontline managers and leaders are going to be three segments of people who will be considered for skilling. Whether it is going to be digital learning, to what extent and how quickly, whether it's going to be more micro learning off the shelf, whether we're going to use augmented reality for processes which are very routine. Are we going to look at virtual reality to make it much, much easier? And what is the plethora of choices that we have when we are considering upskilling and reskilling for people? So broad buckets of skills that I think will emerge and something that we need to be considering include operational skills. So when on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the skills you require to make sure that operations is not getting impacted? Thinking skills. We are moving into a very ambiguous future. Nobody knows what is going to happen. And given the vastness of the shift that we are all experiencing day in and day out, what is the pattern and what is the kind of thinking skills that we should be developing to rethink the future in a way that will be beneficial to mankind? Third, what are the social and emotional skills we need to be concentrating on? Because we are working from home, there is so much of social skills required, balancing act that each of us are doing when working from home in a hybrid work model, or completely when you're working from a home working space. What are some of the social skills within home and outside that you need to be cognizant of. Obviously, there is so much of emotions playing, whether it is within the house or whether it is outside. And so, what are some of the emotional skills that you need to be aware of while dealing with people, while dealing with situations in conflicts, while leading remote teams, while gauging the extent of the external context that is affecting us and still keeping ourselves very relevant? Future skills. What are we and how are we really going to look at newer ways of production? Is there innovative mechanisms that will lessen the turnaround time? What are we thinking about digital skills required, and what particularly will we require in the pharmaceutical space? And most of all, how are we grooming teams to be very adaptable to the learning that each one of them will need to thrive in the post COVID era? So, to summarize, I think embracing digital acceleration in the pharmaceutical industry is very important. Need for adaptive learning. Today, gone are the days when we can consider classroom training to be still available, maybe in pockets, and we don't know. But how are we really looking at adaptive learning in the digital space? It's not only about the plethora of courses, learning opportunities, learning that organizations are providing, but it is also about metacognition, learning how to learn. How are we going to expose our people to that? Finally, it's plenty of buckets of operational skills, thinking skills, future skills, social skills, emotional skills, and skills obviously to manage change that we will really need to consider. So, given that there are digital shifts, there is a need for digital acceleration, it becomes primary for us as learning champions and for organizations to really consider options to upskill and reskill their workforces as quickly as possible to be aligned for survival and for thriving in the post COVID era. Good luck to the digital transformation process happening across organizations, and happy upskilling. Thank you.